Commander Park Min-ho's boots echoed against the polished floor as he walked into the most important room in the galaxy. The Galactic Defense Coalition Council chamber stretched out before him like a cathedral made of living light. Massive, crystalline. Beings towered above him, their bodies shifting between different colors as they communicated in musical tones that made his ears ring. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien engineering. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of species, some that looked like walking trees, others that resembled jellyfish swimming through the air, and a few that Park couldn't even begin to describe. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and the ceiling showed a real-time view of the galaxy, with thousands of stars twinkling like diamonds. Park had dreamed of this moment for years. Humanity had been trying to join the coalition for over a decade, ever since they'd made first contact with the Valkyrie exploration fleet near Jupiter. Now, finally, they had a chance to become part of something bigger than just Earth and its small collection of colonies. Commander Park Min-ho of the Human Federation, announced a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. High Counselor Veltan, the leader of the coalition, began to glow brighter as it spoke. Your species has shown remarkable progress in such a short time. From a single world to multiple star systems in just 2 centuries. Other council members began to hum in harmony, creating a sound that made Park's chest vibrate. He'd been warned about this. It was how they showed approval. The Zephyrian representative, a creature that looked like a floating cloud of silver mist, pulsed with different colors. The Thornback delegates, who resembled massive armored beetles, clicked their mandibles in what Park hoped was a positive way. However, continued Veltan, and the harmonious humming stopped abruptly. We have studied your historical records with great interest. Your wars, your conflicts, your methods of resolving disputes. Park felt his stomach drop. He'd been afraid this moment would come. Humanity's violent past wasn't exactly a secret, and he knew the coalition prized peace and order above all else. Councillor Brixtal, whose crystalline form was deep purple with veins of gold, began to speak. Its voice reminded Park of crystal, glasses being tapped together. Your species shows a disturbing pattern of what you call total war. The concept is foreign to us. When we fight, we follow ancient protocols, rules of engagement that preserve life and minimize destruction. Images began to appear in the air above the council, holographic displays showing human conflicts throughout history. Park watched with growing embarrassment as scenes from World War II, the resource wars of 2157, and the brutal Mars colony rebellion played out in front of dozens of alien species. Look at this, Brixtal continued, pointing to a display showing nuclear weapons. Your species created devices capable of destroying entire cities, then used them on your own kind. No coalition member has ever conceived of such brutality. New voice joined the conversation, Councillor Zethmar of the Aquatic Confederation. Its translator made it sound like it was speaking through water. Our wars are ceremonial. We fight until one side admits defeat, then we negotiate terms. Your species fights until the enemy is completely destroyed. Park wanted to defend humanity, to explain that they'd grown beyond their violent past, but he knew it wouldn't matter. The evidence was right there in front of everyone. Nevertheless, Veltan announced, and its voice carried a note of finality. Humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition is approved. Park felt his heart leap, but then came the crushing blow. However, there is one absolute non-negotiable condition. Human warships are permanently forbidden from participating in any military operations within Coalition space. You may provide medical assistance, supply runs, and intelligence support, but human weapons will never be fired in Coalition conflicts. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the life support systems. Park stood there processing what he'd just heard. They were being accepted as second-class citizens, glorified delivery boys with the most advanced military fleet humanity had ever assembled. We understand this may be disappointing, Veltan continued, but we cannot risk introducing your species' chaotic fighting methods into our ordered conflicts. Our warfare has maintained peace for over 3,000 years. We will not see it corrupted by human savagery. Park saluted stiffly. The Human Federation accepts these terms, honored council. But inside, he was burning with humiliation and anger. 2 hours later, Park materialized in the transporter bay of the human dreadnought Soul's Pride. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, over 2 kilometers long, bristling with the most advanced weapons systems Earth's scientists could design. Its hull was sleek black metal that could absorb sensor pings, and its fusion reactors could power a small city. In the ship's main conference room, Park faced his senior officers. The table was surrounded by some of the best military minds humanity had produced. Lieutenant Commander Kim Daeun sat with her arms crossed, her tactical genius mind already working through the implications. Captain Lee Wonbin looked disappointed but resigned, while Commander Choi Ji-won of the carrier Ulsan's Revenge was openly scowling. "So we're errand boys now?" Kim Daeun asked, her voice sharp with frustration. "We spent 15 years building this fleet, training these crews, developing new weapons and tactics, and they want us to run medical supplies." Captain Lee Wonbin shook his head slowly. "At least we're in the coalition now. Think about what this means for trade, for technology exchange, for humanity's future among the stars." "Future as what?" Commander Choi shot back. "As the galaxy's janitors? We have the most advanced stealth technology in known space, weapons that could level mountains, and tactical AI that can process 1 million battle scenarios per second, and they want us to carry bandages." Park stared out through the conference room's massive viewport at the coalition fleet anchored nearby. Their ships were beautiful, elegant curves and artistic designs that looked more like sculptures than military vessels. But Park could see their weaknesses immediately. Thin armor designed more for appearance than protection. Weapons systems that prioritized precision over power. Formation flying that looked impressive, but left obvious tactical gaps. "There's something they're not telling us," he said quietly. "No species maintains peace for 3,000 years, through ceremony and rules alone. Something keeps their enemies in line, and it's not their pretty ships or their honorable fighting." Kim Daeun leaned forward. "You think there's a bigger threat out there, something that makes everyone play nice?" "Maybe," Park replied. "Or maybe they've just been lucky. Either way, we follow orders. We'll be the best supply runners and medical corps the galaxy has ever seen." But even as he said it, Park was already thinking about contingencies. Human ships would be positioned throughout coalition space, officially carrying medical supplies and spare parts. Their stealth systems would let them move undetected. Their crews would learn coalition tactical doctrine and fleet positions, just in case. Because Park had studied history too, and he knew that in a galaxy full of unknown threats, the species that survived were the ones that prepared for the worst, while hoping for the best. As he looked out at the alien stars, Park couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's real test was still coming. The alarm screamed through Coalition Station Gamma 7 like a wounded animal. Park Min-ho was eating breakfast in the human quarters when the sound hit him, followed immediately by flashing red lights that bathed everything in an angry crimson glow. He'd never heard this particular alarm before, but his military instincts told him it meant something catastrophic was happening. He sprinted through corridors filled with panicking aliens. Velkari officers were running on their bird-like legs, their colorful feathers now dull with fear. The jellyfish-like ethereals were pulsing with rapid light patterns that his translator couldn't keep up with. Even the usually calm thornbacks were clicking their mandibles in distress as they hurried toward their posts. The main command center was chaos when Park arrived. Holographic displays filled the air showing star maps, communication channels, and tactical readouts. But something was terribly wrong with the displays. Entire sections of the galaxy map were going black, star systems simply vanishing from the grid one by one. Lieutenant Kang Minji was at the human observation station, her face pale as she stared at the incoming data streams. She'd been monitoring coalition communications for months now, part of their support role, but Park had never seen her look this scared. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Outer Rim colonies. They're not responding to any communications. 17 star systems in the last 3 days. Complete radio silence." Park looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn to ice. The pattern was too organized to be natural disasters, too widespread to be isolated attacks. Something was systematically moving through Coalition space, and whatever it was left nothing behind. "What's the Coalition command saying?" he asked. "They're calling it equipment failure," Minji replied. "Communication breakdowns, solar interference, but sir, I've been tracking the pattern. It's moving inward toward the core worlds in a perfect spiral. This isn't random." Before Park could respond, the massive view screen at the front of the command center flickered to life. High Counselor Veltan appeared, its crystalline form glowing with barely controlled energy. When it spoke, its usually melodious voice carried an edge of something Park had never heard from the Coalition leadership before: fear. "Citizens of the Coalition," Veltan announced, "we are facing an unprecedented challenge. Unknown forces have disrupted communications with several outer rim systems. The defense fleet is being deployed to investigate and restore order, Archie." Watched as the tactical display showed the Coalition's response. It was impressive by any measure. Thousands of ships launching simultaneously from dozens of worlds. Their vessels moved in perfect geometric formations, each fleet arranged like pieces of art against the starfield. The lead ships were massive dreadnoughts over 3 kilometers long, their hulls decorated with intricate patterns that told the history of their species. Behind them came cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels, all maintaining precise distances. "Can speeds. Beautiful," whispered Commander Kim Daeun, who had joined Park at the observation deck. "They fight like they're putting on a parade." Park nodded, but something bothered him about what he was seeing. The Coalition fleet was moving toward the threat in the same ceremonial formations they'd used for thousands of years. Perfect lines, artistic arrangements, and weapons that fired in coordinated patterns designed more for show than effectiveness. "Minji, are you picking up any tactical communications from the defense fleet?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied, adjusting her headset. "They're following Protocol 77 Alpha, traditional engagement patterns. They're planning to establish a perimeter around the affected systems and demand formal surrender from whoever's responsible." Park felt a chill run down his spine. Formal surrender. They were treating this like one of their ceremonial conflicts, where enemies followed rules and accepted defeat gracefully. 12 hours passed like torture. Park couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything but watch the long-range sensors and wait for word from the Coalition fleet. When the first battle footage finally arrived, he almost wished it hadn't. The view screen showed Admiral Velcrix's flagship, a magnificent vessel called the Harmony of Stars, approaching what looked like empty space. Then the sensors adjusted, and Park saw something that made his mind struggle to process what he was looking at. It wasn't a ship or a fleet or anything that belonged in normal space. It was like looking at a cancer made of metal and shadow, a writhing mass of dark shapes that seemed to bend light around them. The thing was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it moved with a fluid, organic motion that was wrong on every level. "What the hell is that?" Kim Daeun breathed. The Coalition fleet opened fire according to their ancient protocols. Hundreds of plasma lances shot out in perfectly timed volleys, creating beautiful geometric patterns of light against the darkness. It should have been devastating. Against any normal enemy, it would have ended the battle in minutes. The dark. Mass absorbed every shot, like they were flashlight beams hitting an ocean. Then it began to move. Park watched in growing horror as the thing flowed toward the Coalition ships like liquid death. It didn't fire weapons or launch missiles. It simply reached out with tendrils of writhing metal and began to pull ships into itself. The beautiful dreadnoughts, with all their decorative armor and artistic designs, crumpled like paper toys as they disappeared into the darkness. "The ships," Minji said, her voice breaking. "They're being consumed, literally eaten." The Coalition fleet tried to retreat, maintaining their formation discipline even as their comrades were being devoured. But the dark mass was faster than their elegant ships. It flowed between them like water, touching vessel after vessel and pulling them into its bulk. Communications Officer Yoon Nara was monitoring all channels, her face pale as she listened to the death screams of entire crews. "Admiral Velcrix is requesting immediate reinforcements," she reported. "He's lost 60% of his fleet in the first engagement." 60%, Park repeated, stunned. The Coalition hadn't lost that many ships in the last 1,000 years. "Dive conflicts combined, sir," Nara continued, her voice barely audible. The enemy, it doesn't respond to communication attempts. No demands, no negotiations, no surrender requests. The survivors are reporting that it doesn't seem to want anything except to consume everything it touches. On the tactical display, more star systems were going dark. The pattern was accelerating now, whole sectors falling silent as the unknown. Threat spread through coalition space like a plague. Park watched the strategic map and felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't like any enemy the coalition had ever faced. Their 3,000 years of ceremonial warfare, their rules of engagement, their honorable battle protocols, none of it mattered against something that didn't follow any rules at all. Get me a secure channel to Earth Command, he ordered quietly. Sir, Minji looked confused. We're supposed to maintain communication silence except for emergencies. Park looked at the display showing hundreds of billions of lives represented by dots that were winking out one by one. Lieutenant, he said grimly, I think this qualifies as an emergency. As he prepared to send humanity's first real military communication since joining the coalition, Park couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover why the galaxy had been peaceful for so long. It wasn't because everyone followed the rules. It was because something out there in the dark had been sleeping, and now it was awake and hungry. The scourge had arrived, and the beautiful civilized galaxy was about to learn what real war looked like. The Coalition Council chamber looked like a graveyard of shattered dreams. Park Min-ho walked through the massive space, his footsteps echoing off walls that had once hummed with the voices of dozens of species. Now, half the crystalline seats stood empty, their surfaces dark and cold. The representatives who had once filled them were gone, their homeworlds consumed by the spreading darkness that called itself the Scourge. High Counselor Veltarn flickered weakly at the head of the chamber, its once brilliant crystalline form, now dim and cracked. When it spoke, its voice no longer sounded like singing crystal, it sounded like breaking glass. The situation continues to deteriorate, Veltarn announced to the handful of remaining council members. We have lost contact with 47 core systems in the past week. Our defensive fleets are reduced to 30% of original strength. Park watched the surviving councillors react to the news. The few remaining Thornbacks clicked their mandibles in distress. The ethereal representative pulsed with dark, mournful colors. Even the proud Zephyrians, who usually maintained their composure no matter what, were visibly shaken. We require immediate assistance, Veltarn continued. Human logistics vessels must double their supply runs to our remaining fleets. Medical ships must be deployed to evacuation zones. We need honored counsel, Park interrupted, stepping forward from the human observation area. Our combat vessels are standing by. The entire human fleet could be combat-ready within hours. We have weapons and tactics that might... The reaction was immediate and explosive. Councillor Brixtal's crystalline form flared with brilliant, angry light, casting harsh shadows across the chamber. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of crystal shattering. Absolutely not. Never. We would rather face complete extinction than allow human savagery to corrupt our sacred traditions of warfare. But, honored councillor, Park pressed, your current tactics aren't working. The Scourge doesn't follow your rules of engagement. It doesn't accept surrender or negotiate terms. Maybe it's time to try something different. The remaining council members began to hum in discord, not the harmonious sound of agreement Park had heard before, but an ugly, clashing noise that made his teeth ache. Several of the alien representatives were flashing angry colors or making aggressive gestures. Our martial traditions have maintained peace for 3,000 years, declared Councillor Zethmar, its watery voice bubbling with indignation. We will not abandon them now in our darkest hour. That would make us no better than the monsters we fight. Park wanted to argue, wanted to point out that their precious traditions were getting entire species wiped out, but he could see it was hopeless. The coalition would rather die beautifully than live by fighting ugly. After the council session ended in the same deadlock as always, Park made his way to the station's hydroponics bay. It was one of the few places on the massive station where he could find some peace. The growing plants reminded him of Earth, and the soft humming of the life support systems helped him think. He was examining a cluster of Terran tomatoes, when he heard quiet footsteps behind him. He turned to see a young Velkari officer approaching hesitantly. The bird-like alien's usually bright feathers were dull and grey, and its large eyes were filled with exhaustion and grief. "Commander Park," the alien said in accented English. "I am Sub-Commander Thelan of the Velkari Defense Force. May I speak with you privately?" Park nodded, noting how the young officer kept looking around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Thelan's feathers ruffled with emotion. "My homeworld, Velkari Prime, was consumed yesterday. 3 billion of my people, gone in less than 6 hours. The evacuation ships barely got away before the planet was eaten." Park felt his heart clench. He'd seen the reports, watched the long-range sensors as entire worlds simply vanished from existence. But hearing it from someone who'd lost everything made it real in a way that tactical displays never could. "I'm sorry for your loss," Park said quietly, placing a gentle hand on the alien's shoulder. "Your people were brave. The evacuation report said they maintained order right to the end." "Yes," Thelan said bitterly. "We maintained order while we died. We followed protocols while our world burned. We died beautifully, just like the Council." "Once," the young officer's voice cracked. "But beautiful deaths don't save anyone." Park waited, sensing that Thelan had more to say. "There are others like me," the Velkari continued. "Officers who've lost their homeworlds, crews who've watched their fleets get slaughtered while following ancient battle formations. We want to fight back, but we don't know how. Our training, our instincts, everything tells us to maintain formation and fire in coordinated volleys." "What do you need from us?" Park asked. Thelan's large eyes met his. "Teach us. Show us how humans would fight this enemy. We can't officially break with coalition doctrine, but maybe we can learn new tricks quietly." Over the following weeks, Park found himself running a secret military academy. Human officers met with desperate coalition survivors in hidden corners of supply depots, abandoned sections of space stations, and the cargo bays of medical ships. They shared tactical data, analyzed scourge attack patterns, and developed new strategies that no coalition officer would ever admit to using. Commander Kim Daeun was working 18-hour days. Her tactical genius focused entirely on the problem of how to kill something that seemed unkillable. She'd set up a makeshift command center in the cargo bay of a human medical frigate, surrounded by holographic displays showing scourge movements and coalition fleet positions. "The problem isn't their technology," she explained to a group of coalition officers who'd secretly gathered to learn. "Their ships are actually quite good. The problem is how they use them." She gestured to a tactical display showing a recent battle. "Look at this engagement. Perfect formation flying. Coordinated. Fire patterns, textbook coalition tactics. Beautiful to watch. Completely useless against an enemy that doesn't care about your formation." A Thornback captain clicked his mandibles. "But how else can we fight? Our entire military structure is based on coordinated group tactics. Break." "The groups," Kim Daeun said simply, "fight like individuals. Swarm tactics, hit-and-run attacks, chaos patterns that the enemy can't predict. Stop trying to look good and start trying to win." But changing thousands of years of military tradition wasn't easy. Even the coalition officers who wanted to adapt found themselves falling back into old patterns when the shooting started. They'd try new tactics for a few minutes, then revert to formation flying and coordinated volleys as soon as things got intense. "They're not listening," Kim Daeun reported to Park after another disappointing battle report. "Or they're listening, but can't change. It's like asking a fish to stop swimming. They form up in their pretty formations and die beautifully, just like their ancestors." Captain Huang Sumin brought even worse news when his cruiser Inchen's Wrath returned from a supply run to the core worlds. The veteran officer looked haggard as he delivered his report in Park's private quarters. "Coalition High Command has made their decision," he said grimly. "They're pulling every remaining ship back to Veltar Prime for one final battle. Every vessel they have left, all concentrated in one place." Park felt his blood run cold. "They're planning a last stand." "The ultimate last stand," Huang confirmed. "They're calling it the Final Glory, one massive fleet engagement where they'll either destroy the Scourge or die trying. They want to end this war in a single battle, following all the ancient protocols. Park stared out the viewport at the stars, many of which now marked dead systems. The Coalition was planning to commit suicide, and they were going to do it in the most honorable way possible. He walked to his personal terminal and called up a secure tactical display that showed the positions of every human vessel in Coalition space. To anyone looking at official records, they were scattered randomly throughout the galaxy, carrying medical supplies and spare parts to Coalition forces. But Park knew better. Every human ship was positioned exactly where it needed to be, near strategic jump points, close to major battle zones within striking distance of critical targets. For months they'd been moving into position under the cover of their support role. "How many ships do we have in theater?" he asked quietly. Kim Daeun checked her secure tablet. "All of them, sir. Every human vessel in Coalition space has been repositioning for optimal supply distribution, according to the movement plan you approved 6 months ago." Park nodded slowly. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they were told they couldn't fight. While the Coalition clung to honor and tradition, humans had been doing what they did best, adapting, preparing, and getting ready. To do whatever it took to survive. The Coalition wanted to die gloriously at Veltar Prime, but Park had other plans. When the final battle came, humanity would be ready to show the galaxy what real war looked like, even if it meant becoming the monsters that everyone feared. The countdown to humanity's real war began at exactly 0400 Coalition Standard Time. Faki. Minho stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, watching the final Coalition fleet arrange itself around Veltar Prime like a funeral procession. Every remaining ship in the galaxy had come here for this last desperate battle. Elegant cruisers from the ethereal Dominion, massive thornback dreadnoughts covered in ceremonial spikes, and the few surviving Velkari vessels with their artistic hull designs. They looked magnificent. They looked like they were sailing into a museum display rather than a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. "Beautiful formation," muttered Lieutenant Kang Minji from her station. "Perfect geometric patterns, optimal firing solutions, classical battle doctrine. They're going to die exactly the way their ancestors did." Park said nothing, but his hands gripped the railing as he watched the alien fleet deploy. 3,000 ships arranged in concentric circles around the planet, each vessel in its assigned position, each crew following protocols that had been unchanged for millennia. It was like watching an elaborate dance, except the dancers were about to be slaughtered. "Long-range sensors are picking up the Scourge approach," reported Communications Officer Yoon Nara. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Park thought about all the Coalition officers he'd spoken with over the past months, all the young aliens who'd lost their homeworlds while following orders to fight honorably. Sub-Commander Thelan was out there somewhere in the formation, probably aboard one of the few remaining Velkari ships, ready to die for traditions that had already failed him. "Sir," Minji said quietly, "the human fleet is in position. All ships are holding their cover positions and waiting for your signal." Park nodded. Scattered throughout the battle zone, disguised as medical frigates and supply haulers, the entire human fleet was waiting. They'd been preparing for this moment for months, moving into position under the cover of their support role. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be. When the Scourge arrived, it was like watching a nightmare spill into reality. The darkness came first, a shadow that seemed to eat the light from nearby stars. Then the shapes became visible, biomechanical horrors that defied description. The largest ones were the size of moons, writhing masses of dark metal and organic tissue that pulsed with their own evil light. Smaller creatures swarmed around them like parasites, each one still larger than a Coalition battleship. The Coalition fleet opened fire immediately, following their ancient protocols. Thousands of plasma lances shot out in perfect coordination, creating geometric patterns of light against the darkness. The display was breathtaking, streams of energy forming complex mathematical shapes as they struck the enemy. It looked like the galaxy's most beautiful fireworks show. The Scourge absorbed every shot without slowing down. The plasma strikes that should have vaporized normal ships simply disappeared into the writhing darkness like raindrops hitting an ocean. Then the creatures began to move, flowing toward the Coalition fleet like liquid death. Coalition vessels are maintaining formation, Nara reported. "They're following Engagement Protocol 77 Delta, coordinated retreat to secondary positions while maintaining optimal firing solutions." Park watched in growing horror as the first coalition ships made contact with the enemy, a magnificent ethereal cruiser, its hull covered in bioluminescent patterns that told the story of its species, simply vanished into the mouth of a scourge creature. A Thornback dreadnought, armor gleaming with 1,000 years of battle honors, was pulled apart by writhing tentacles of dark metal. "Coalition fleet is down to 60% strength," Minji reported. 50%, 40%. The slaughter was happening exactly as Park had feared. The coalition ships were dying in their perfect formations, following their beautiful protocols, maintaining their dignity right up until the moment they were consumed by the darkness. "Coalition Command is requesting immediate evacuation support," Nara announced. They're asking for all human medical ships to begin rescue operations." Park closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about everything that had led to this point. The Coalition's arrogance, their refusal to adapt, their willingness to die rather than compromise their precious traditions. Then he thought about the billions of lives that would be lost if the scourge wasn't stopped here. He opened his eyes and stood up slowly. "All human vessels," he said into his communicator, his voice carrying across space to every ship in his fleet. "This is Admiral Park Minho, authorization 77 Alpha. You are weapons free. Repeat, you are weapons free." The transformation was immediate and shocking. Across the battle zone, human ships that had looked like harmless supply vessels suddenly exploded into action. False hull plating fell away to reveal massive weapon systems. Cargo bays opened to deploy swarms of combat drones. Nuclear mines that had been disguised as medical supplies activated throughout the Scourge formation. Soul's Pride herself underwent the most dramatic change. Her outer hull, which had made her look like an oversized hospital ship, split apart and fell away in sections. Underneath was revealed the most advanced warship humanity had ever built, a sleek predator bristling with weapons that no coalition species had ever imagined. "Target their command nodes," Park ordered, as his ship's main guns swiveled toward the largest scourge creatures. "All vessels, combat pattern Omega. No formation flying, no coordination, no rules. Kill everything that moves." What happened next would haunt coalition survivors for generations. Human ships didn't fight like civilized beings. They fought like cornered animals, like desperate survivors, like a species that had learned warfare from a planet that constantly tried to kill them. Captain Lee Wonbin's destroyer, Busan Thunder, didn't try to maintain distance or use proper tactics. He drove his ship straight into the heart of a Scourge bioship, ramming it at full speed while broadcasting concentrated electromagnetic pulses that fried every organic system in the creature's nervous system. The collision tore both ships apart, but the Scourge creature died screaming. Commander Kim Daeun, coordinating the attack from her command ship, didn't use careful targeting solutions or elegant firing patterns. She launched everything humanity had: nuclear torpedoes, antimatter warheads, kinetic kill vehicles, and weapons that converted matter directly into energy. Her attacks turned entire sections of the Scourge formation into radioactive debris. The human destroyer Daegu's Fury made the ultimate sacrifice when it was surrounded by smaller Scourge creatures. Captain Cho Mingyu ordered his crew to abandon ship, then overloaded the vessel's fusion reactor while diving into the thickest part of the enemy formation. The explosion created a miniature star that vaporized everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. "All ships, converge on the Scourge Command Nexus," Park ordered as his own ship shuddered under enemy fire. Hull plating was peeling away. Atmosphere was venting into space, and half his crew was dead or wounded. But Soul's Pride was still fighting, still killing, still refusing to die beautifully. Captain Huang Sumin's cruiser, Incheon's Wrath, led the final charge toward the largest Scourge creature, the nightmare thing that seemed to be controlling all the others. Behind him came every surviving human vessel, their hulls battered and burning but their weapons still firing. They punched through the Scourge formation using tactics that horrified the watching coalition survivors. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, weapons that turned their own ships into bombs. One human frigate used its crew as ammunition, launching life pods filled with nuclear warheads directly into enemy creatures. Park's own ship, Soul's Pride, was falling, apart around him. The bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. Half his officers were dead and structural warnings were screaming from every system. But the ship's main guns were still operational, and the Scourge Command Nexus was directly ahead. All remaining crew abandon ship, Park ordered. Emergency evacuation now. Sir, Minji protested, you can't. That's an order, Lieutenant. Get everyone to the escape pods. This is my fight now. As the last of his crew evacuated, Park stood alone on the bridge of Soul's Pride and aimed his dying ship directly at the heart of the Scourge swarm. The command nexus loomed ahead like a mountain of writhing darkness, but Park could see the glowing core at its center, the thing that controlled all the others. For the love of the stars, he whispered, as Soul's Pride plunged into the creature's mass, her overloading weapon systems creating a chain reaction that consumed the enemy's central intelligence in nuclear fire. The explosion lit up half the solar system, and when the light faded, the Scourge was finally truly dead. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where moments before there had been the writhing darkness of the Scourge fleet, now there was only silence, a deafening quiet broken only by the soft crackling of radioactive debris drifting through space like metallic snow. Sub-Commander Thelan floated in the command chair of his badly damaged cruiser, staring out at the graveyard that surrounded Veltar Prime. His ship's hull was cracked open in 3 places, atmosphere venting slowly into space, but they were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were alive. Around him, the surviving coalition vessels hung in space like broken toys. Out of the 3,000 ships that had come to make their final stand, fewer than 200 remained functional. But they had won. The Scourge was gone, completely and utterly destroyed. The price of victory lay scattered across the battlefield in the form of human wreckage. Not a single human vessel remained intact. Where Soul's Pride had made her final run, there was now a slowly expanding cloud of superheated plasma and twisted metal. The other human ships were similarly gone, some vaporized in nuclear explosions, others torn apart by ramming attacks, all of them sacrificed in the most brutal display of warfare the galaxy had ever seen. Thelan's communication system crackled to life, and the familiar form of High Counselor Veltarn appeared on his screen. The once mighty crystalline being looked smaller now, its form flickering weakly as it tried to process what it had witnessed. "Sub-Commander," Veltarn said, its voice barely above a whisper, "report on the human fleet status." Thelarn looked at his tactical display, which showed nothing but debris where the human ships had been. "They're gone, Honored Counselor. All of them. Every human vessel in the battle zone has been destroyed. But how?" Veltarn's form pulsed with confusion and something that might have been grief. "How did they succeed where our entire combined fleet failed? We had superior numbers, better formation discipline, thousands of years of tactical experience. How did a handful of humans accomplish what we could not?" Before Thelan could answer, a new voice cut through the communication channel. It was Lieutenant Yun Nara, broadcasting from an escape pod somewhere in the debris field. Her voice was hoarse from smoke inhalation, but clear and strong. "Because we don't fight to look good," she said simply. "We don't fight to follow ancient rules or maintain honor. We fight to win. We fight like our children's children depend on it, because they do." Another voice joined the conversation. Captain Huang Sumin drifting in space in his survival suit after his ship had been destroyed in the final assault. "The galaxy taught humanity that everything wants to kill us," he said, his words carrying across the void. "Our own planet tried to kill us with ice ages, volcanoes, diseases, and predators. Space tried to kill us with radiation, vacuum, and hostile aliens. So we learned the most important lesson in the universe. Kill everything that threatens you before it kills you." Thelan found himself thinking about the months he'd spent secretly learning from the humans. They had tried to teach coalition, officers new tactics, but even the most desperate survivors couldn't break free from millennia of tradition. The humans, on the other hand, seemed to have no traditions at all, only an endless willingness to adapt, to change, to do whatever it took to survive. "They didn't fight like soldiers," he said half to himself. "They fought like parents protecting their children, like they had something worth dying for." Over the following weeks, as rescue ships arrived and the survivors were evacuated, the full scope of what had happened became clear. The human fleet hadn't just defeated the Scourge, they had completely annihilated it, using tactics that no other species would have even considered. Intelligence reports painted a picture of warfare that was both horrifying and awe-inspiring. Humans had used their own ships as weapons, turning vessels worth billions of credits into guided missiles. They had converted medical supplies into weapons, using hospital ships as Trojan horses to position nuclear mines inside enemy formations. They had sacrificed entire crews to deliver single killing blows, treating their own lives as just another resource to be expended in the pursuit of victory. The coalition leadership struggled to understand how beings could fight with such controlled fury. Their own military doctrine was built around the concept of honorable combat, battles fought according to ancient rules that minimized casualties and preserved the dignity of all participants. The humans had thrown all of that away in favor of pure, brutal effectiveness. A month after the battle, search and rescue teams found Admiral Park Min-ho's emergency beacon among the wreckage of Seoul's Pride. The message it contained would be played in coalition military academies for generations to come. To any who receive this transmission, know that humanity accepts the role of monster so that others may remain beautiful. We understand that the galaxy needs species who can preserve art, culture, and civilization. But the galaxy also needs species willing to do the ugly work, to make the hard choices, to become what others cannot bear to be. For the love of the stars and all who dwell among them, we gladly burn ourselves to light the way to a better tomorrow. The Coalition rewrote their entire military doctrine in the aftermath of Veltar Prime. Not to fight like humans, they recognized that such savagery was beyond them, but to understand that sometimes survival required embracing methods that civilized beings found distasteful. They created new training programs, developed more flexible tactics, and most importantly, they learned to respect the dark gift that humanity had given them. But the lesson that resonated most deeply was this: humanity hadn't been banned from coalition warfare because they were weak or chaotic. They had been banned because human warfare was so utterly, brutally effective that it rendered thousands of years of civilized conflict obsolete. The Coalition had instinctively understood that allowing humans to fight would change the nature of war itself. In the years that followed, as the galaxy rebuilt and new threats emerged, the Coalition maintained their ban on human military participation. But now it came from a place of understanding rather than arrogance. They knew that humanity was their ultimate weapon, a species so committed to the survival of life itself that they would become death incarnate to preserve it. The memorial built at Veltar Prime bore a simple inscription in dozens of languages. To the humans who died so that beauty might survive, you showed us that true love sometimes wears the face of war. New species applying for Coalition membership were shown the battle footage from Veltar Prime and given a simple choice. They could join the civilized galaxy and follow the rules of honorable combat, or they could face the consequences of what happened when humanity was forced to fight. Most chose civilization, the few who didn't. Well, they learned very quickly why the galaxy's most peaceful species had been so desperate to keep humanity's warships out of their conflicts. It wasn't because humans couldn't fight according to the rules. It was because once humanity started fighting their way, the war was already over. In the end, the Coalition learned the most important lesson in galactic politics: never let human warships join the fight, because humans don't fight wars, they end them. And in the vast darkness between the stars where new threats were always lurking, that knowledge brought a strange comfort. The galaxy was beautiful and civilized because somewhere out there humanity was standing guard, ready to become monsters again if necessary. For the love of the stars, they would always be ready. The end.